Dinners at Grandma's are always delicious. We'd love to know her secret.
Best chef I know.
Creating an image that is defined as cinematic is a difficult task as a cinematographer. A successful commercial or film looks a certain way and is always pleasing to the eye. So how do you properly create work that feels cinematic? In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I create cinematic looking images by going over a Spec commercial for McDonald's I was the cinematographer for. I'm going to go over some lighting diagrams and show you how you can execute and plan something exactly like this. So the scene that we're going to be looking at specifically is one that I got a lot of questions for on how exactly we executed this. And more specifically, a lot of these specialty shots you see here. I'd like to give you some preface and show you the wide shot that we're looking at, and then go into this burger shot and how we achieve this unique looking angle, and go into this specific shot, which is one of my favorite shots of the piece because it feels very commercial and what you define as cinematic. And then going over this last shot with this really interesting camera movement that we have here. I'm going to start off with the wide shot of the scene because this is a very important, really skill as a cinematographer when lighting things and really telling a story that has a lot of different shots in a specific scene. I always like to light my wide scene because usually I'm using a lot of big fixtures, maybe outside, or to set my general ambience. And then when I go for more different inserts and intercuts inside the scene specifically, I am going to bring in panel lights to really elevate the commercial look. So we're going to start off with what this was shot on. So this was the Sony Venice, and then I'm shooting on the Zeiss Supreme Primes. And then this scene, we're looking at a 35 millimeter. And this was the longest focal length that we use in the entire piece. Because this is a commercial, usually I use 18 mil, 20 mil, 25, 24, 29, anything in that range because it gives you that wide commercial feel that we're always going for. I wanted this shot to feel wide, but I also didn't want to be too wide to show off any of the not nice parts of the room. I know when to call it, especially when looking at using wide lenses to set your wide. And I really like to be back in the room and shoot on a longer lens to give you that really depth and everything that we're looking for here. And then for filtration, I'm using 1/8 black satin. Black satin really blooms just the highlights and it's a very subtle touch. It's not like a black pro mist or anything like that. It's kind of really a sleeper when it comes to using filtration. It just gives you that little kiss and highlights. And I don't really like to use filtration because I don't really like to burn a look when it comes to filtration on set. I know this is something that you can do in post easily, especially with the tools nowadays for color grading. And that was my main set. But we have our camera set here at 5600 Kelvin. This is supposed to feel like dinner time, but during the day. These are long summer days, and that's what we're going for in this piece specifically. And I know that I wanted to light this scene primarily with the big windows that we have in play here. So I'm gonna do a top-down view of this to really understand what's going on. And then we have this room that we're looking at here. And then we have our two windows that we have in play. And then we have another window over here. And this was really planned out and flushed out in the pre-production process. And then I gave my gaffer a really rundown of how I wanted these scenes to feel. I wanted them to feel bright and airy, very commercial, windows blown out because there's a lot of things that we didn't want to show in the background. If we're realistic, there's a street here and there's going to be lots of cars passing. So you'll see this in a lot of movies that they completely shear the windows, which you can see on the inside of the room here. And then on the outside, they usually have a silk or some type of diffusion that they can spread the light across. So it's not like a single point source. And that really gives you that blown out look that really feels very naturalistic. So we have the shears in front there. And then behind here, I have an artificial silk, and this was like an 8x8. And then I have another artificial silk, and this is a 6x6. This is what we had in the truck, and this was what was available to me. And then here I have a 600Cs. And then I also have another 600C right here. And then this light is set to 5600 Kelvin because I'm going for that really daylight look that we have going on here. And then this naturally sets my light and shadow side here. So I have all this light coming from here, and then this is my natural shadow side. And because the room has this really dark tone to it, I didn't need any ambient light here because I have a bunch of lights coming in from the background. And I learned this analyzing a bunch of references as well as looking at a bunch of movies where I could see the BTS clips of this. And usually movies and a lot of film sets have all these lights outside that are just blasting in, usually on the camera that they ND down to really expose for all that light coming in, and the windows are completely blown out. And this gives you automatically a lighting direction. And this was kind of my first time really analyzing this technique and putting it into play. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like a cheat code of placing all these lights out here and then shooting directly into it, because it gives me that naturalistic look. And then on this other side here of this window, we didn't have enough silks or anything in the truck. So I have a artificial silk flag just boomed out, and then I have a 1200D right here. So this is a 1200D, and that's set to 5600 Kelvin because it's a daylight balanced source. These I know are at 100%, and then also there's Fresnels on them, so I could flood them and spread it across, and then we kind of had them backed up so we could give it that spread across the whole thing, and it didn't look like a point source. That's very important when you're trying to blow windows out like this. We didn't have enough Fresnel that was rated for the 1200D, so I backed that up and then put the silk flag on it. And then those shears on this window as well, they were kind of thicker. And then this was blasting into it and giving me kind of like a 3-point lighting setup and giving me that ambient and really setting my room tone as well as a direction to shooting on. And then in addition to the scene, we have a bunch of B7C bulbs. There's one here, and then there's a lamp fixture on the side here that had one in play. But this is giving me everything that I'm looking for as interest as a cinematographer. I also have to give myself context of what we're shooting. We're shooting a McDonald's commercial, so this is supposed to feel warm. So that's why I have the B7C bulbs on the inside, set this to this warm, really temperature that we have here. So this is 2700 Kelvin, and this is just giving me a bunch of interest in the room and really motivating the orange lights and also accenting the candles and giving that McDonald's brand and warmth and glow. So if we even look at really our subject's face here, we can see that we have that shadow, but it's not too dark. This is very commercial. This is very high key and low contrast ratios. And then you can see that light coming in from the back and really lighting her, and then coming in from there, kind of giving her a sandwich. And it's wrapping around this corner that we see here. So this is basically me setting 3 lights up in the background as well as with some silk and diffusion. And this was while I was already shooting other scenes in other rooms. And I already told my gaffer exactly what I wanted to do in the scene. I just had to show him a picture reference and he knew exactly what to do. And this is a gaffer that I've been working for the past 5 years of my entire career. We kind of grew up together as videographers, and then he went into gaffing, and then I went into more cinematography and being a DP. And then this just goes with communication because we both like the same style because we kind of grew up on everything. And then I really usually have to show him picture references and say, I want this light here, and plan it exactly. So this was planned ahead of time. And just because we were already in a flow and we knew exactly what we wanted, it was a really easy process. I just set up my camera and then everything was already there, and we just had to dial in levels, which was perfect. The next shot that we're looking in this sequence is a shot that I got asked a lot about specifically, and was one that was given to me as a challenge, and I really rose to the occasion to really dial this in. So this kind of goes into a backstory of really analyzing the shot and really testing it beforehand. So I tested this with my partner, who was the director of this commercial specifically, because she really wanted the shot to really highlight the food piece of this. There's usually a hero shot or a beauty shot of the food being in place in any McDonald's commercial or any food commercial, and she wanted to be more dynamic by adding this big reveal with using this cutout we have of this box here. This added a lot of complications and a lot of challenges that I had to overcome. Everybody thinks that you just show up on set and you can shoot things, but when it comes to really elevating your work and really diving into what it is to be a cinematographer or director of photography and getting shots like this, I had multiple roles where I had to test a bunch of things, and this is usually the process between a director and cinematographer for achieving shots, and it's always practicing and trial and error. What we did originally is we ordered a Big Mac, and then we cut a hole in it and then used the Sony FX3 to dolly in through that hole using a probe lens. And then we're like, there's not enough room here. So what happened if we cut the burger in half, shift the burger half, and then try it again? And then we still found out there wasn't enough room. And this is going into really the problem-solving aspects of a cinematographer. The director has a shot in mind. It is your job as a cinematographer to achieve that with your leads that you have. What we did is we basically unraveled what the McDonald's packaging looked like. It took a picture. I brought it into CAD software and I drew it out and basically enlarged the length of it. So if we look at the original McDonald's packaging, it's like 2 squares with a bunch of things like tabs to really connect it and then have everything together. I basically tripled those dimensions, so we had this long box, which you can see in the BTS here. And then I had the same tabs and everything, and I scaled it up so we could have the length properly to do this as well. And then this just gave us a flat lay that we could print out on cardstock and then fold the box and make it ourselves. And then that would situate a full burger and then give us enough motion to give us this big reveal, as well as have enough room to create the depth that we want to showcase the girl's face, the full entire burger in this motion, as well as get that hero shot the director was specifically looking for. If you look at this as a snapshot and look at the size of her hands, the size of her heads, obviously this is a big perspective thing because we're shooting over probe lens, but this is literally comical. Especially with the scale of things. So this goes behind what movie magic truly is, and something I was really proud to achieve as a cinematographer, especially bringing a specific director's vision to life. So this was shot on the Venice as well, and then to achieve this like kind of underslung thing we have, and to get that tilting motion as well as her going through that, we shot this on the Ronin 2. There were a lot of shots that we wanted to get that involved probe lenses, and I love using the probe lens. I'm gonna draw a top down of what this entire scene looks like here. So I have the burger in play, and then I have my talent there, and then I have my camera here, and the long probe lens that is basically entering here and then shooting into our main talent as well as this burger. And then what we have this on, I'll draw a side view and you can see some of the BTS, is a T-bar setup with a dolly. So I don't have any of the stands and getting this overhead shot in play. You could achieve this in multiple ways, and this was the best thought I had, because we had to basically shoot her, then we had to shoot the reverse of that to get the grandmother's reaction, and then we had to shoot the wide as well. So I basically wanted the art department to set everything, and then I would work around them. There's a lot of other ways that you could achieve this a lot easier, but I was working with a schedule that was super tight. So I had to basically adapt to every other department because I really wanted the shot to come through and I really wanted to achieve that. And this is the way I saw that. There could have been a better way to do this, but this was very efficient in what we had. So this is the top-down view. And then if we do a side view, so this is my talent, this is a table we have here, and this is why we had to go underslung. And then we had a bunch of apple boxes that we stuck the burger tray to here. And then we have the camera here, and then there's the sensor block, and then the probe lens coming through here. And then this was on a Ronin 2 up there, and then we had some Mitchell mounts that connected this to the dolly, and the dolly is going over across here, and then we had a stand in the back. So this stand is sitting right back here. And then what we did here is had that T-bar across. As you can see here from the BTS, this was a very complicated setup, and luckily that we own this camera, so we could put a lot of the rental money back into the things I needed to achieve this shot, which was mainly all the dolly track, the stands, and especially the Ronin 2. So this was a balancing act to get that. And the reason why I put this on the Ronin 2 is because I wanted to basically control it from a remote head, so I could have some tilting. But now we're gonna go into exactly how this was lit. So I'm gonna keep those diagrams there. And this goes into the importance of lighting your wide first and really plan everything. All those lights that you saw from the top down before with the 600s outside as well the 1200 exactly behind her, those were all in play. And the most difficult thing about using the probe lens itself, so this is the Laowa probe, is that it has an aperture of T14. This is absolutely the worst to deal with because it's such a light hungry lens. But what I love about the Sony Venice is that it has a dual base ISO. And if I was really strapped, I could shoot this on the Sony FX3 and I can guarantee if I gave it to the same colors, it would look almost identical. But because the Venice has a base ISO of 500 and 2500, I went with this base ISO to raise everything that I wasn't working with such a light hungry lens. And that means I could use all the fixtures that I had in play and I didn't have to double up on them with anything. The Sony FX3 is the best pairing for this lens because you can shoot at 12,800 and basically it's shooting with a lens at 2.8. Obviously your depth of field changes at shooting at T14, but having that dual native ISO is a game changer, especially for probe lenses. Because I set all my lights in the wide, we basically set up this camera and I'm like, perfect. I only need like 2 panel lights so I can actually light my subject here. And that was using the F22C as my main key light. And this is double diffuse, so F22C. And this is double diffuse. And in front of that, I actually have a silk. So I have 3 stops. If you're regular to this channel, you will see that I use this combination all the time as my main key light, especially in commercials, because it gives me that soft, naturalistic look. And then to light the burger, we actually use the Nanlite Pavo Slim And this just had the 2 stops of diffusion on it, and this was blasted. These both at 100%. So this is the Pavo Slim, and this was at 100% as well. And then I matched both of these lights to the lights that we have outside, which is 5600 Kelvin. And then the F22C is lighting my talent here and giving me that natural edge light and key light, but I didn't necessarily have a catch light, and I didn't really catch this when we were doing it. I would add a small little MC here to add that catch light, but unfortunately this is something that we're moving very fast. I didn't catch it. This is giving me that low contrast ratio, but also establishing that Rembrandt lighting. And because that window is completely blown out in the background, I'm getting a nice basically separation between her and that window, which is light and dark parts of our image. I have light in the background, and then I have light on her face, I have dark on her face, and then it goes right to that overexposed light on the background as well. And then if we look at our burger, we have that key light here with the Pavo Slim that is giving me that nice edge light, as well as product shot to highlight everything that we love about a McDonald's burger. And then I have that natural neg coming from here. And then what really helped to light this burger itself is that we're using a white box. So I'm getting a bunch of natural fill back into that from bouncing from that white box. I'd usually add a bunch of white cards and a bunch of bounces to really fill out the product. But because we're working with something that is inherently very hard to light, and you can see that by her even opening the box more and more light is coming in, and it's very pleasing to even see that, because if we had lights inside the box, it wouldn't feel as natural. So I'm going for that healthy balance of commercial to naturalistic, which is something that you always have to balance as a cinematographer. But this was the beauty shot and highlight of the commercial, and I was really tasked to come bring that together. And that's why I have so many lights in play, as well as this complicated Ronin setup as well. The next shot we're gonna be looking at here is one of my favorite shots of the piece, just because it's very commercial, and this is a very pleasing shot to me of what I'm always looking for as a cinematographer. So I'm shooting at 500 ISO here. I'm shooting on a 35mm lens. I'm kind of tilted down my subject as well as on a 45-degree angle. And this was to complement the burger shot. And the lenses we're shooting on were the Zeiss Supreme Primes, and these stopped down to 1.8. But I was always shooting at a T-stop of 2.8. Because I wanted that deep focus. I wanted her nose, her eyes, as well as her ear in focus as well. Because if I was shooting at 1.8 or even something at T2, I would only have mainly her eyes in focus. So I'm looking for that deep focus. I'm looking to show off everything that we have here. The burger is slightly out of focus because my plane of focus is mainly on her, but giving that deep focus and not being so technical and stubborn when it comes to shooting on fast lenses. And that's something I've learned just with experience and maturing as a cinematographer. I always rarely shoot wide open now, because I always ask myself, what is the context of the project and what am I showing off? I'm not trying to be a camera nerd and shoot at the fastest lens always as possible. So in this shot here, that's exactly what I'm doing to achieve that deep focus. And then we have that F22C in play, and this is double diffuse with also that silk. So this is 3 stops of diffusion, same light that was in play here. So F22C, and this is set at 5600 Kelvin. And then because we're not dealing with a probe shot here, I had dialed this back, and this was sitting at roughly 40%. And what that F22C is doing is wrapping around the light that I already have. So the lights outside, which is the 600X, is giving me this natural edge light and popping her out from the background. And then the F22C is bringing that across. And that's something that I've learned to do as a cinematographer as I've grown, is not just have one key light, but have multiple lights in play. One generally sets your ambient tone and giving you a nice edge, and the other wraps that light around, especially with the contrast ratio you're trying to ask yourself. This is shooting a McDonald's commercial, so that contrast ratio is going to be low if you look on the light side to the shadow side of her face. And then we have that nice Rembrandt lighting, but that is very subtle. And then we have a bunch of shadow that's on her face right here, and it's very subtle as well. And then from the light that we have outside, which is that 1200D coming through here, it's already diffused by those shears and also silk that we have out here. And it's giving her a beautiful edge light that is not harsh as the edge light that we have in the front, but it is nice and soft because all of the fusion. And it just pops out her shoulder and gives a lot of addition to what we already have in the scene. And I'm not just talking about the light, I'm talking about the set design as well as the wardrobe, styling, and hair and makeup and everything that we have here. I am trying to show everything off in its best light, and this is very commercial when it comes to the art direction as well as the styling and when it comes to the hair and makeup as well. And then just to add a little spice, we have a lamp fixture here. And then we couldn't fit a B7C bulb here, so I shaped an aperture MC to the inside, and this is just bouncing around. And then I have this set at 2700 Kelvin, and this is at 80% because we're trying to balance out all the light that we have coming in here. And it's just a nice addition to have. The next shot that we're going to be looking at here is one of the most complicated that I've done to pull off. And this was something that I was very proud about because the director and I kind of worked at this together. We wanted a really nice shot to end off the scene so we could transfer into the next scene, which is a dolly shot that trucks across. But we wanted to have a lot of camera movement, and this is what the director really pushed me. She's like, okay, perfect. We have a lot of coverage of the girl giving that line as well as getting that probe shot. How can we incorporate another specialty shot to show off the grandma in her best light? It's basically talking about the experience of grandma's house, and then we wanted to add that little wink and nod to it. So I'm like, can we go across the table, tilt up into her face? And she's like, well, can you do that? I'm like, well, we can try. And that's the important aspect I love to bring to cinematography, is not like, oh, can we do this? I'm like, let's try it and see what we can do. And this was the same inverted dolly setup that we're working with before. And if you guys want to see a dedicated video in terms of how you build something out like this, please let me know in the comments below. So we have the dolly track here, and then I'm on a Mitchell riser, and then on that is the Ronin 2. Because the Ronin 2 allows you so much flexibility, that's why I like to do remote head operating specifically. And the probe lens is pointed down like this. And this is the peri probe lens, so it gives you that 90-degree field of view. So that is the lens that we're looking at. So it's pointing directly down the table. If we draw the table here, I am tilting up. So tilting up as this is dollying in. You can see from the BTS, it was a very complicated setup, but something that we planned out and I was very proud of, because I've done a similar setup like this, but it wasn't the tilting. It was hard mounted to the dolly, and I knew this would work. So this goes in a bunch of experience and testing that I've done before. I knew that the peri-probe lens worked in this configuration, and I knew that the Ronin 2 could have the capacity of doing it. And then I knew that the dolly would give me my pushing in, dolly in motion. And I know the Ronin 2 could give me that tilt action as well. So this was already something from a bunch of jobs and a bunch of experiences that I pulled for and combined to give me what I'm looking for exactly here. We kind of had to do this a bunch of times. And then luckily we just got the take that we really liked. So the reason why this works so well is because we're shooting at T14.2. So it gives us that deep focus, and it shows off everything beautifully, especially the wardrobe, everything in the background, the walls, the wallpaper. And this really gives homage to everything that went into this whole project. And the reason why the shot works as well is it gives you that sweeping pass motion with everything in the foreground and then landing on what we're supposed to be looking at, which is our talent here. So I have that F22C that we had in play last time. And this is triple diffuse, so 3 stops, F22C, 40% at 5600 Kelvin. So 5600 Kelvin. And then this is acting as my main key light. And then we just had to pop a bunch of ambience into the room to really lift it on this side specifically. So I have a 600C, and then this is pointed up into the room, giving me some ambience. And this is set at 5600 Kelvin as well, roughly sitting at 40%. And then in the other room, I have another 600C, and this is set to a more orange tone. And you can see that in the background here. And it's that light as well as giving me that streak in the background here. And then I had a floppy on the side to add some contrast and negative fill back into the image. And we can see that floppy in action here, adding some contrast back into the face. So we have some light, dark, salt and pepper, as well as separation. And then that ambient tone is bouncing back into here with all the lights we have in play outside. And that key light is wrapping that light back into my talent's face. And then you can see that completely highlighting everything we see on her jacket. And then we have some shadows back into here. So this is giving me that very commercial look when it comes to movement as well as lighting. You can get away with a lot when you have that very commercial movement, and it's just bringing in those bunch of sources. So I just want to showcase my thought process when it comes to shooting a scene like this, to add as many shots as possible that feel commercial and that have that look, and then really being challenged by the director as well to add movement into everything, that everything feels intentional. Every shot in this was pre-planned, and we didn't have anything on the fly. And it was really important to execute and plan this whole process. Ideation to posting this project and getting out to the world, it was like a 6-month process. And for me as a cinematographer, I was brought in the early on pre-production when this was really an idea. And this was a month process of me dialing in all these shots with the director and specifying what they want. The shoot day was a lot less stressful than it needed to be. And this was because of a good pre-production process. So if you guys want to see a dedicated video about the pre-production process, let me know in the comments below, because this is something I see a lot of cinematographers struggle with, and I struggled with the longest time. It's only in the past year I've really started planning things properly, and this is just due to a myriad of experiences. I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe for more if you want to see more content like this, and I'll see you in the next video.